This week on the Johnny V Golf Show, Good Golf has released one of the most controversial advertisements in golf of the last decade, but is the backlash too excessive? And Scotty Scheffler and Wyndham Clark are going head-to-head for who gets Player of the Year. We'll have that debate today. Brooks Koepka is also joining TGL for Season 3. I'm Johnny V Golf. This is the Johnny V Golf Show. First up on the docket today is probably the most controversial golf story of the last year. I think when we look back at 2026, this will be taking the cake. And it might even take the cake for the most controversial story of the decade. Has the good backlash gone too far? I think there's an argument to be made for that, and we will be making a little bit of that here today. But it's been insane how much this backlash has been snowballing. What started as golf social media controversy has now become a mainstream business story. You've been able to see this in the Wall Street Journal, CNN, CBS, Business Insider, other major outlets. It's been all over the mainstream news, and it's gone beyond golf. This isn't just some golf Twitter is mad at good for something, as they usually are, Grant Horvat for something, as they usually are anymore. We're now talking about major retailers pulling good apparel and good merchandise from their stores. Golf Channel has taken a stance, or at least the Golf Channel show The Big Break and good collaboration. Callaway obviously have issued apologies. The PGA Tour potentially looking at getting rid of the good championship or good as the title sponsor of that event. At what point does the backlash become disproportionate to what has actually happened? I think there's a debate to be made there. Of course, if you've been living under a rock, right, you have probably been the only person who has not seen this controversy with the good advertisement that has come out. Obviously, they have released this new driver, the good driver, and the good golf balls branded with Callaway. It's a new collaboration. They've done this in the past. It looks fine. The driver and the balls look fine, but they released the ads, obviously, to promote them and contain the good group. I had originally saw the full 60-second version on Instagram, which is not the one that is being sort of shown to the light here with the controversy. It's in fact the 15-second clip, but I originally saw the 60-second clip. My original reaction was like, well, all right, this is kind of a weird ad. I don't really get it. I've not seen Obsession because it was a Obsession-themed thing, or at least that's what Garrett had said in his apology. I originally thought, that was a little odd, not really getting it, not really paying too much attention to it, wasn't really thinking anything of it. But then you go on to Golf Twitter, Golf X, whatever, and the entire Golf Twitter is talking about this. And to this day, as of this recording, they're still talking about it. I then suddenly understood what everybody was talking about with the ad, because they only posted this 15-second clip that had gone viral, which is the one that you've probably seen of Garrett Clark sprinting over and pushing down the good girl. I'm not entirely sure what her name is. But the full ad was this parody of Obsession and, everything that was going on, with that movie, which I have not seen. But the isolated clip was dramatically different from the context of watching the entire concept. But the entire concept was not posted to Twitter. It was only posted to these other channels. And so they saw what they saw and were outraged by it. And obviously, the narrative of this was pushing domestic violence had come up. But I want to establish here before I say any of my opinions here that I don't really watch good. I'm not like a good fan, or, I don't really watch much YouTube golf to begin with. So in this case, I'm not like defending people or advocating for people, because I just simply don't really watch that much of it other than the highlights that might come up on my Instagram feed. But I want to say here, when it comes to this controversy that has blown up, in my mind, disproportionate. Number one is that this ad was really dumb. I am unbelievably shocked that this got through the entire approval process between two separate companies. Because if you think about it, the number of opportunities someone had to stop at this was alarming. The good marketing team has to pitch the concept. Garrett and the good team then have to approve the concept. Then they also have to participate in shooting the ad. Every single person in that ad had to participate and consent to participating. Then they have to actively shoot it. Then they have to edit it. Then Good has to go back and review it and also give it approval. And then Callaway has to go and give it approval. And then Callaway has to post it. Not a single time did anybody stop and say maybe physically shoving a woman onto the ground is not the best way to sell a golf club. Like, that's insane. How did you not think of that? Like, maybe we shouldn't be pushing a girl down onto the ground. Like, in the 2026 climate, you probably should have seen that one coming. And so, in some cases, I do think the backlash is somewhat warranted. Because, like, yeah, you probably shouldn't have done that. You were the one who walked into that corner. You made your bed. You have to lie in it. So the ad was bad. It was in poor taste. It should not have been approved. And I think they well deserve criticism for that. However, there is a number two that can be true at the exact same time. Two things can be true at one time. I think the reaction has gone too far. The ad being stupid and not great and probably should not have been made does not mean that Good had malicious intent behind this. It was a scripted skit that involved everybody who knew what was going to happen, and they're not actors. They're all members of the Good group. This wasn't like the girl was unknowingly assaulted or anything. The entire premise was an exaggerated parody about being obsessed with a golf club after a movie that had just been released. And there is no reason to believe that Good was actively trying to promote violence against anyone. So I think that reacting to this video, we're reacting to what the video looks like rather than the people involved in what they were trying to do here. The intent obviously does not erase the impact. The people involved, the people are allowed to find it offensive. I think that's totally reasonable. People are allowed to criticize it. But there is a difference between this was a stupid ad and should not have been made and that this company promotes domestic violence. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. Now, this is where it kind of gets interesting in my mind, right? The insane consequences that I've seen over the last week or so, it's insane to me in the first step here that we've been talking about this for over a week now. Or I think a week at this point, because I think it was released last Thursday. I'm recording this on Thursday. It is insane how this has still been in the media. And if anything, this is also a testament to the golf world as a whole. If we've been talking about this for an entire week, that really shows you like how much we have to talk about in the golf world. So basically nothing. What we've seen from backlash, first of all, on the retail side and on the company side, Good merchandise has apparently been pulled from Golf Galaxy, Dick's Sporting Goods, PGA Tour Superstore, Target. Golf Galaxy is also pulling out of their sponsorship of the Big Break and the Big Break Good TV show that's going to be on Golf Channel, which I feel bad for the creators that weren't even involved in that because there are some creators in there that are in Big Break. Now they don't get to have that shown, or at least for now. That's being postponed until next week because they wanted to have the Golf Galaxy sponsorships being taken out of the whole thing. They don't want to put their name behind it. That's a real consequence. I can understand that. And basically, when you look at the retailers, right, they don't have much to lose because they're big retailers. They're selling a bunch of other stuff in their stores. And so the short-term impact of them, like, they're not going to lose that much in terms of sales from one merchandise because they're selling a bunch of different merchandise lines. And so they avoid the downfall, like PGA Tour Superstore, Dick's, they avoid the downfall of going with Good by not selling their products while also not really giving up that much in sales, which probably weren't selling that much anyway when you look at the grand scheme of the entire retail department. Same thing with Target. I bet Target doesn't even realize that they were selling it until they saw this, and they're like, oh, shit, we got to get rid of this. So, it's not really that much for them. I don't think that it's that big of a deal for them, but it's obviously a big deal for Good. The PGA Tour CEO Brian Rolapp has publicly addressed this. He said it's very disappointing in the initial response of it as well. And he basically said, like, hey, we are looking at potentially removing Good as the title sponsor from the Good Championship, which is in Austin, I think in November. So, they have, apparently there's another alternative that might be ready to go if that's going to be the case. That is like a pretty big deal too, because that was a huge thing that was announced earlier this year, and a big thing that was going to be for good, coming down the pipeline. Again, I can understand that, but they are a super big entity, and to ruin those relationships could mean, could potentially, ruin good more than the PGA Tour. But the the impact here for good is becoming immense at this point. I'm not entirely sure where else they're selling good apparel and other things like that, but how does this impact their ability to get onto golf courses in the near future to be able to do what they're doing as a YouTube group? I don't know. But what's coming down the pipeline for them, I think we've yet to see what is actually going to happen. Now, what I will say, and this is separate from the entire argument as a whole, there is a whole lot of grandstanding going on in the golf social media world. There are some people who are genuinely upset about this, and they know it in their hearts to be upset about it. I'm not talking to those people. Do what you got to do. There are people that have completely legitimate things going on. But there are also people that are looking for engagement and are using this as a cudgel to get rid of good because they simply don't like good in the first place. There's a lot of people out there, especially on Golf X, a lot of the shrinkers, as we know here on the JohnnyVGolf Show. I am very much anti-shrinker. I don't think that the game needs to be shrunk, and I think the people that should be shrunk out of it should be the people who believe that the game needs to be shrunk. Those people need to go. But there are a lot of people out there who are shrinkers who actively dislike good because they've brought more people into the game and they've actually made an impact on the game. And I believe that those people don't actually honestly care. They are using this as ammo to say more things about how they don't like good and they think they should be wiped off the face of the golf industry. Now, you can tell there's other people out there. There are small golf accounts, right, who are talking about this, who very much are trying to ride the wave. There are other folks that are not, but there are people out there that you can tell that have not talked about this stuff before, that have not talked about golf drama or anything that's happening there, and you can tell that those people are trying to ride the wave. They have like this 10-part thesis about good or about this particular issue. And now all of a sudden they want to do it. It's because of the fact that it's become so big, they want to ride the engagement wave, which let's see how that works out for you when this passes from good, because it will pass. And again, there are people out there that are definitely like very sincere about this. They have, stories of these things that have happened to them or people they know, and people that have like the ad genuinely bothered them. And that's totally legitimate. But if you've never cared about this subject before or never had, significant impact on this, and suddenly you're making, 5 posts a day about good and how they need to be destroyed or how this ad was terrible, I'm going to question whether you're actually fighting for the cause or whether you just found a really good engagement opportunity. Or, and this is the big one, I think, for a lot of folks, and I think this stems broader than what golf is and what the situation is. There are a lot of people out there that just simply tag other people that they believe feel the opposite to them, and they have a distinct hatred for them and are using this as a way to cudgel those people. That can be a broader political view, that can be whatever that might be, but they're using this as a way to cudgel people that they don't like and believe, whether it's true or not, believe that they think that those things are okay when potentially that's not the case. Now, there are people in my mind are also kind of reacting to the reaction when it comes to like to a lot of this. I would even say with the retailing, I would say this is definitely the case, and some of the golf social media. Good's posting an apology. People are reacting to the apology. Garrett posts an apology. People react to Garrett's apology. Callaway posts an apology. People react to the Callaway's apology. It just keeps going on and on and on. And it gets to a point where no one's even talking about the 60-second ad anymore. They're just talking about the downfall of good. And, there's a lot of folks out there that I think they're doing that for malicious intent, and then other folks that are definitely not, or just reporting on it. And I think that's compounding on good as a whole, which definitely sucks for them. I also want to talk about just a little bit on Garrett's apology. You know, he acknowledged that the eye was a terrible idea. He regrets participating in it. He understands that people were upset. And you saw people criticizing even that. What exactly do you want him to say? Of course, like, he doesn't like how it was received. You know, that's literally why he's apologizing. He's going to, like, is he going to come out and say, screw you guys, it was hilarious? You know, he didn't even have to release an apology, and yet he did anyway. Because we know in this world, if you release an apology, you're basically admitting guilt, regardless of whether you agree with it or not. Which, you know, maybe he does and maybe he doesn't, but publicly he says that he doesn't, and I believe that. So in my mind, just to kind of sum this up here, was the backlash deserved? I think some of it, absolutely. But now we've gotten to the point where we're a week into this, and everything is just falling around them. You know, the merchandising, the PGA Tour sponsorship potentially going away, the nationalized TV show. You know, we're treating this as, you know, a malicious intent to support domestic violence. I don't think that that's the case. It was a bad ad. It was a bad decision. It was not malicious. The response is excessive. All of those things can be true at the exact same time. You don't have to like good. You don't have to watch good. You don't have to buy good. You can think the ad was disgusting, and you can think it was stupid. You can also think that Callaway completely screwed up and good completely screwed up. But I think there's a pretty big difference between holding a company accountable for terrible creative decision and deciding that one terrible creative decision tells you everything you need to know about the people that work there. Next up on the docket this week, who deserves PGA Tour Player of the Year? It's that time again. We're getting to the Tour Championship. That is happening this week, and suddenly the Player of the Year conversation feels less and less obvious the more that we get towards the Tour Championship. For most of the season, obviously, Scottie Scheffler, it's felt like his award to lose. But then Wyndham Clark comes back. He wins the BMW Championship, his third win of the season, and now it becomes a actual, like, legitimate debate. There are obviously other people that are involved in this conversation too. Cameron Young has obviously played very, very well this season. Unfortunately, couldn't get it done in the majors. Matthew Fitzpatrick has won multiple times as well. He is well deserving, but I do think that he's kind of fizzled out towards the end of the season. Chris Gotterup is up there as well. He had a very great start to the season, but unfortunately he's kind of fizzled out as well. Still playing very well, but it's sort of like, in this case, what have you done for me lately in this sense? Rory McIlroy, depending on how you frame the season, obviously his back-to-back Masters win after not winning the Masters for well over a decade. There's definitely a debate to be had there. But the conversation, I think now, when you look at the last few months, I think it comes down to Scottie Scheffler versus Wyndham Clark, especially after what Wyndham Clark has done recently. Fitzpatrick and Young were in the conversation earlier, but I think that they've kind of lost that momentum, and I don't think that they're necessarily as much in the conversation again, but I do think you can make great arguments for it. Before we talk about who deserves it, I want to set some boundaries here. I want to take the personalities of these players out of it, and I want to speak specifically to Wyndham Clark. We all know why. We're not going to go back over that. Whether you like him doesn't matter in this case. Whether you think he's arrogant doesn't matter. Whether you condone his actions of destroying a locker room door, obviously you don't, but those things don't matter. You actually saw this firsthand in my Instagram poll, if you've seen it, and I should say I saw this, unless you were part of the Instagram poll, that I put up a poll on my Instagram and basically said, hey, look, is Wyndham Clark a Player of the Year contender? And so many people actually said no, but then they would DM me and say, I think he deserves to have the conversation be had, but I just hate him so much. And I don't think that that is a great argument to make. I respect the distinction. I appreciate the honesty, but you can dislike somebody and still acknowledge they've had a very incredible season. And the award should be about what has happened on the course and the context around how that was able to be done. Now, it's easy to say Scotty Scheffler. It is a very solid argument. I respect that argument, and I think it's well deserving of PGA Tour Player of the Year. 2 wins this year, 12 top 5 finishes, and multiple of those are runner-ups. I think it's 5 runner-ups that he's had. Like, that is incredibly consistent golf. 17 top 25s. When you add up all of those, right? 12 plus 17 plus 2, you're getting what? 14 plus 17. That's 24. That's 31. Is that my math right? So 31 out of the weeks that he's played. How many weeks has he played? I mean, that's insane to basically say that 31 weeks out of probably like, I don't know, 35 weeks, he's been in the top 25 at least. That's pretty incredible. He's been leading the FedEx Cup for the most of the season. There is an argument to be made that Scotty Scheffler should make it, and it is a very well-deserving argument. He's been there every single week. I want to say, though, let's put up Wyndham Clark's stats a little bit. He's had 3 wins. One of them was a U.S. Open. That's his second major win. It is very hard not only to win 1 major, but to win 2 majors. He won the BMW Championship as well just recently. He's won the other tournaments as well. And I think that your placement in tournaments matters so much. It is such a huge part of the conversation. Obviously, winning a majors is huge. He's now he's winning in the playoffs. He's now number 3 in the FedEx Cup. He could play well enough to win the FedEx Cup next week. I think that's a very big part of it. However, I do think context around how his wins had happened is also a major part of this. The mental aspect is a huge part of this whole thing, that he has had an absolutely brutal relationship with the crowds this year. And you can make an argument that it's deserving of that. I will not take that argument away from you. I don't necessarily disagree. I don't necessarily agree. There are people that were actively rooting against him at these places. They were celebrating mistakes, and they were booing his achievements. He goes on and he wins the U.S. Open anyway, one of the biggest and hardest majors on planet Earth, and one of the biggest and hardest golf tournaments on the planet. You know, that is incredibly difficult to perform in that. And I would argue that what was happening to him on the course was basically giving him a multiple shot disadvantage. I do not know how he was able to do that and not get in his head. And maybe he was getting in his head. He probably was getting in his own head. But he was able to do it anyway. Same thing with the BMW. At a multiple shot lead, he was able to basically hold off Cantlay and Rory McIlroy, despite the crowds also being basically doing a very similar thing as the U.S. Open. That doesn't mean the crowd reaction should earn him Player of the Year points, you know. But I think it does demonstrate something about his ability to perform under pressure. I do think it should matter in the context of this conversation. I think the thing now, at least this year, with that conversation in mind, is what do you value more? Consistency across an entire season, which is 100% a great argument. That's obviously going to be Scotty Scheffler. But also winning big tournaments under pressure, and the biggest amount of pressure, I think, when you have people pretty much channeling negative energy to you. I think that Wyndham wins in that case, and I think he wins in almost any case. I don't think I've ever seen a more negative reaction to a player ever. Above Patrick Reed, above the European Ryder Cup team at Bethpage. There's not been a single person that has ever seen that level of negativity towards a single person. You can make the argument for the entire Ryder Cup team for the Europeans. That's fine. I get that. And maybe Rory McIlroy at the Ryder Cup. But I think Wyndham Clark takes the cake, and I don't even think it's close in the case of negative energy. I'm leaning towards Wyndham just simply because of that. I think it's obviously an underdog argument. I think if you give it to Scotty Scheffler, it makes total sense. I think that it's definitely a great debate. However, I personally lean towards that because I cannot even imagine myself going through what he has had to do. However, we do have that one final chapter going on here with the Tour Championship. I think that is definitely going to be a massive determining factor here. I think if Wyndham Clark goes on to win this week at the Tour Championship, I think there's a very clear argument that Wyndham Clark would be Player of the Year if he were to go on to this week to win the Tour Championship, to win the FedEx Cup, and maybe even just winning the FedEx Cup as a whole if he plays better than Scotty or he plays better than whoever he needs to play better than. I don't necessarily know what that data looks like, but I think this week, if you're going to make an argument for Wyndham Clark, I think this week is going to be the week that proves that. And so he needs to come out and do that, and I think it will become a definitive factor. But until then, I think the argument is very good for both of these folks. Let me know what you guys think about who should be Player of the Year this year. Next up on the docket today, the 2027 PGA Tour schedule is out, and it's fine, but I can't stop thinking about 2028. Of course, if you've seen the news, the 2027 schedule came out on Wednesday earlier this week, and there are some small changes. It's fine. It's obviously very similar to what we already have. There's 36 tournaments, 8 signature events. You have the 4 majors, obviously, that are all worked into that. You got the 3 FedExCup Playoffs event. And, I mean, there's one major change, I guess, is that they have a new championship called the Sampo Championship. It'll be penultimate to the regular season, which will be at the North Course in Silverado, which will be really cool to see. It's nice now that we are getting just a few changes to these courses every year. It feels like that for a long time and still we were playing the same courses over and over again, which to an extent is fun. Like, obviously there's those big ones that you need to keep on the roster, like TPC Sawgrass and, you know, the Quail Hollow. And that's all fine and dandy, but, you know, we're playing the Wyndham Championship every year, and it's like there's nothing new to it. Like, no wonder you can't, you know, get, you know, as much hype around these tournaments and potentially even people to come and play these events, because you can't, like, there's just nothing new and fun about it. So it's nice to get a little bit of that, but all I can think, man, is I wish it was 2028. I wish we were in 2028, because if you've seen the news, there are some big structural changes that are coming to the playoffs in 2028 with the big schedule refresh, obviously with the 2-track series model, with the signature events basically turning into the championship series, and then you have like the track 2, which is I can't even remember what it is called. It's not championship series, it's like challenger series, I think, which, you know, there's a debate in that in itself, but it is the cool thing that is happening is they're changing up the Tour Championship, which, if you've seen now, is going to have match play, which is going to be so sick. Basically, how it's going to go is you're going to have the series finale that it's going to be a Tour Championship series finale. 90 players are going to qualify for that throughout the point season as we go along. And it's a traditional, you know, event, and it's going to get you into the playoffs. The top 32 in the playoffs are going to go to foursomes match play, and during that portion of it, they're going to play those events, and they're going to go to the top 16. The top 16 is going to be the week 2 of the Tour Championship at a different course. It's going to be head-to-head match play. You're going to have bracket-style advancement, etc., and basically how we did the Dell match play at the time. And the person who wins is going to be the Tour Championship. That is going to be so unbelievably sick. I cannot believe it took them this long. Like, we tried everything on the PGA Tour for the Tour Championship, and it feels like every step they made was just so wrong. Like, they tried doing the staggering started scores, where, like, if you won, if you're number 1 in the FedEx Cup, right, you're going to be 10 under par starting. And because they wanted to have the person who won the Tour Championship also win the FedEx Cup, which was stupid in itself. But you're giving the world number 1, basically, or whoever is at the one of the FedEx Cup, you're giving them a massive advantage. And they were throwing a bunch of money at it. They've changed the format over the years, and it's just never really felt like the culmination of the PGA Tour season. I want to, like, we don't need the Tour Championship to be like a Super Bowl, but it needs to feel like something. You know, we would get more excited for the Dell Match Play when that was around than it would be, you know, for the Tour Championship. We obviously get more hype for the majors, of course. That's great. But it felt like the Tour Championship was like well down the list, like past the top 10, which really sucked. And so doing these changes are I'm very excited to see what ends up happening. But right now I think that there's some really cool things that are going to come down the pipeline. Like in the new Tour Championship match play, like the finals match will be like kind of like the U.S. Amateur, like Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy head to head on the final day. The winner gets the Tour Championship. Everything's on the line, millions of dollars. It's going to be so cool as instead of like a bunch of people just playing a normal golf tournament, and you know we get that, you know, another 35 weeks out of the year. So I think this solves one of the biggest problems of the FedEx Cup, is making it interesting. We have the match play. This is why I want to be in 2028 at this point, because we have to wait another year. And I get it, there's sponsors and things like that. But this is the thing that we've been waiting for a long time. And I'm curious to know what you guys think about the FedEx Cup playoffs, how that's going to end up being. I just think that I wish it was this year. And I think they should move it up, in my personal opinion. But let me know what you think. And last up on the docket today, we have Brooks Koepka is officially joining TGL. And did we all see this coming? Absolutely. I actually made a video on this a few months ago about my picks for the Motor City Golf Club roster. Of course, if you do not watch TGL, there are 6 teams representing 6 cities inside the SoFi Center, and they are basically going head-to-head in like a Ryder Cup style points match, 3v3 alternate shot into singles, which is head-to-head, and you compete for the most points. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend that you do watch it. I think that there are 2 distinct things. When you go to the SoFi Center, you get a distinct product. When you go and watch it on the broadcast on ESPN, etc., I think there is a distinct product there, and I think both of them are good in their own ways. I am a huge fan of it. I've been there many a times. I've worked with TGL, and it's been a blast to work with them. And I say this genuinely. I think it's really fun. I think it's especially fun for folks who are not as into golf as they would be. Like, for example, if you're watching a 4-hour-long broadcast, it's very hard to digest, especially if you are a newcomer to the golf series, the golf scene. It's definitely easy to take a nap during a 4-hour broadcast, but usually TGL matches last about 90 minutes to 2 hours, and it's super digestible. But now they're adding another team to the scene, which is Motor City Golf Club, representing Detroit, Michigan. And they announced this a number of years ago at this point. I think it was like the beginning of 2025 that season 3 would have this. And now we have our first person added to the roster in Brooks Koepka. I made that video a while ago talking about how I think that it should be a 4-person team should be Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, Neil Shipley, and Luke Clanton, the hole-in-one boys, of course, and then Jordan Spieth, who can make putts from other zip codes. It would be a very well-balanced team and probably a very strong team. But did we all see this coming? The answer is 100% there were signs. If you look back, there were a couple of things over the course of the last few seasons where Brooks Koepka was in the SoFi Center when he was still at LIV, and he was basically like walking around the SoFi Center, hanging out with Max Homa and the Jupiter Lynx. And this was well before he had even gone to the PGA Tour again. This was well before that. So, you know, this was obviously sparking the discussion of, will he come back to the PGA Tour? Clearly, now that it has happened, it probably was. And maybe that was part of his deal. Like, he had to go back and join TGL as well if he wanted to come back and join the PGA Tour. Who knows? But that was one of the cases. And then the other case was during one of the pre-round interviews between it was Boston Common versus somebody else. I can't remember. But Boston Common, Rory McIlroy was talking to Scott Van Pelt in a pre-round interview, and it was either the day of or like the day after Brooks Koepka was officially coming back to the PGA Tour and leaving Live Golf. He had said something right at the end of one of his interviews, basically saying that, hey, we'd love to get some of these Live players back on the PGA Tour and potentially playing TGL. And so that was obviously a very clear sign. And now here we are, where we have come full circle, where Brooks Koepka is joining TGL, and he is going to be under Motor City Golf Club. So he's going to be playing a number of matches. Obviously, he is a very, very good golfer, and they're going to want to play him as much as possible. And I think it's going to be really fun. I'm glad that they're adding more teams and more players to it. I'm excited to see what's going to end up happening over the course of Season 3 and with WTGL as well. But this is super exciting. I'm very eager to see more people in the SoFi Center and how that ends up working for TGL Season 3. All right, and that'll do it for episode 2 of the Johnny V Golf Show. Let me know what thoughts you have on all of this. The Tour Championship changes, Scottie Scheffler versus Wyndham Clark, the good ad. Is the backlash too excessive? Brooks Koepka joining TGL. We will talk again very soon.